Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another Photoshop tutorial. Today we're going to be making yet another server banner, which is a banner that you see in the top left corner of our server. And because people keep on asking, even though I mention it and leave it in the description, you need to have at least tier 2 of boosting, which is 15 boosts on your server to get this feature unlocked. Otherwise, you won't have it, you won't be able to use it. You'll only be able to see it if you go to servers that have that unlocked. So today we're going to be doing a type of banner that's really applicable to a wide variety of servers. It says Pokemon. I just use that because it's simple and I already have the little shapes that I can use. But it's really could be used anywhere. This background here is probably familiar if you've seen the other tutorials I've made for server banners. So I'm doing that, and these can always be swapped out for other shapes that are more applicable to your game, your Reddit community, or whatever else you have for your server. And this image right here can be switched out pretty easily with anything you want, and you just clip it over these lines right there. So this design right here that you see is just a quick mock-up I did. The version we're going to be making in this tutorial is going to be better, because you can see I messed up a little bit with this part. But the idea with this is it starts across like this atop, and it works its way down. And these little pieces here, the out and the in, should be alternating. So be out, in, out, in. But you can see with this mock-up, I didn't do that, but that's the way we'll be doing it for the actual version. And this space down here, it might seem a little empty, but what's the point of having this nice layered background if nobody can even see it? I did bring a few of these over to this side, and so we'll get into this later, just to help spice it up a little bit, but you can maybe put a logo if you really wanted to, but honestly, I prefer to leave this empty. And this is where the name of your server goes, and this is, as the text mentions, other stuff. So now we have the general idea of how the end product is going to look. I want to go ahead and start the actual tutorial. So we're going to do File, New, and it depends for you on what you're starting on. If it's the main screen, you hit Create New. And we want the sizing to be at 960. I'm not typing. 960. And the height to be 540. And then we're going to go ahead and click Create. Always delete that background, don't bother with it. Create a new layer and get rid of that. And what I'm going to bring over is my little color palette, color scheme that we'll be using for this whole tutorial. There it is, color selector. And I recommend you find something like this. I'll just Google the phrase color combinations, and you'll find plenty of websites that have palettes like this that you can use to get a nice color combo for your banner or whatever project you're working on. And we're just going to be using some of these colors. I'm not going to use the purple, but everything to the right we will be touching on. So the first color we're going to be using is this one right here. And what that's going to be is just our backgrounds. Really simple. Just drop that down. And now we have our nice blue. So I'll name this backgrounds. Next part, just to get it out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and make our little border. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the darker version, because that's what we're going to be using now. I'm going to group this up real quick. This will be named our base layer. And then our border, we're going to have it go across like that. Our stroke's already set up. I would say about 5 pixels for the border. Drag it out. And then we're going to want to adjust it. Actually, that is nowhere near enough. 7. Let's try 9. That's not what I wanted. Let's try 8. Cool. And we can always adjust it if we want to. So move it in a position that you think is nice, and then go ahead and edit that. Hold shift while you're moving it, otherwise it's gonna resize proportionally, and if you just set it up the way I did, you don't want proportional. Cool. Make sure it's all centered, and we can leave that as is for now, and we'll be coming back later to it and adding a few little graphical effects. The next part is we're gonna go ahead and make our backgrounds. For me, it's going to be Pokemon background, but for you, it can be really whatever fits your community best. So let me go ahead and grab those Pokemon assets real quick, and then I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I've grabbed the little shapes, and I've already gone ahead and add these to a group, and we'll name this to BG Shapes. And this is going to go underneath our base layer. First thing we're going to do is Control T, and for my case, I'm going to resize this down to 60%. But for you, it could vary depending on what image you're using. You get it. Next part is we're going to make this luminosity at 35%. Where's luminosity at? There it is. Bring this over to 35%. As you can see, that's the general look of how the final product will look. Not this layout here, but just the... can't think of the phrase for that. Anyway, next part is I'm going to go ahead and grab all of these and put them in their own separate layers. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. Alright, so I went ahead and broke these up into separate layers. You can see I named them all. Next step is going to be separating them all out to get our initial pattern, which we're going to copy paste all the way throughout. So I'm going to go ahead and start at this corner right there. And then I'm going to move the Pokeball, let's say about here for now. And then we're going to put the Snorlax right in between. So the way we want it spaced out is there's not too much space, but also not too little. So it doesn't look cramped and also doesn't look too spacious. We want a nice balance right in between. So I'm going to get these all laid out, and then I'm going to show you the copy pasting pattern we're going to do afterwards. Okay, so I went ahead and laid these out. So when we go ahead and copy paste it over, it should go through very nicely. So I named it set 1, and let's go. Control J. Just going to paste it over. So let me get rid of that Charmander because I kind of forgot he was sitting there in the corner. There we go. And from here, let's just see the set 2 real quick. We can copy paste down. So Control J, bring that down, and make sure the space stays similar throughout. Then take all of these, Control J, bring it down, and as you can see, it goes throughout the whole thing rather nicely. Name this set 5, set 6. Great. And now we have our basic backgrounds all laid out with whatever shape you chose to use, in my case, Pokemon. The next step is we're going to get the whole left side set up right over here. That process is both simple and complicated. Let me that border real quick. And let me show you what I mean by that. So we're going to be using this red color right here. So go ahead and grab that. If you're following the same exact tutorial. If you're doing something else, then whatever color you decide to use for that. We're going to be using the rounded rectangle tool. And we're going to make this in a new group. We'll name this the left side as our general name, and I'll make that red. And then control group, and this will be our shape. And the way we want to do this is we're going to drag this out to a appropriate size for our initial, because whatever size we pick here for the height of this item, that's going to be the height we're stuck with for the rest of the left side. So it's important to pick something that will work well, or you think well, and then max out the edges. So the edges are completely and entirely curved. And then from here, you're going to start copy pasting it up and down. Let me show what I mean. Control J. Bring it up. Oh, I didn't even hit Control J. Control J. Bring it up. Make sure those are touching right there. And then you're going to adjust it. Make sure you hold Shift when you do so. If you're using Photoshop Creative Cloud, If you're using an older version of Photoshop, you can just drag and then you adjust it. So keep in mind what I mentioned before. We want out, in, out, in. So this is out, that has to be in, and so on, because we don't want it to look like a disorganized mess like the other one. And before I start playing with that, I'm going to cut through it and then just show you the final version, but I'm just telling you how to get set up. What you want to keep in mind is the top section should cover the entire space, and as you go down, you should peter down to more to the left side of the build, because you want this space right here for your text, and you want to kind of get off to the bottom where this whole bottom part is completely covered up. So now that you have a general idea of how it should look, I'm going to go ahead and pause real quick and spend the next 5 hours getting that right. Just joking, but it will take a bit of time, and you don't want to sit here for 20 minutes and watch me do that. So I'm going to pause, get that done, and show it to you. And if you're making your own version, you can just feel free to just drag this from this file onto yours or try it yourself. But see you in a few. Okay, so I realized my mic cut out when I came back from that pause. So what I'm talking about here is mentioning how to actually make those little cuts that you're seeing. So from there, because I forgot to mention that earlier, but the cuts that you're going to be making is you go over and you're going to grab a layer that already has, I'm sorry, the layer directly above it. You're going to apply a black overlay to it. You're going to bring it down. I'm sorry, not going to bring it down. You're going to drag it left or right, depending on your scenario, and then you're going to go to the layer below it, which is the original layer. Hold that layer, control, click the little icon, and then you're going to hit delete. And make sure that original layer that you originally control Jade is going to be rasterized. And you're going to see an example of that right now in a moment. Yep, so right there, I would be repeating what I'm just saying, but my mic was off. And now I am attempting to find the correct layer. There should be a pause real quick while that happens. Yeah, see, the problem with all these lefts and rights is it takes a year and a half for it to find anything. Okay, so I found it, and this is exactly the step I was mentioning. You bring it there, you find out which one it is, you're going to do Control J. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the part where, because you don't want the bottom layer that's cutting in to be sticking out, because you want the part that's sticking out to be to the left of the part that's being cut into. So I went to the layer that was already cut on the right side. I hit Control J just so I could lengthen it a bit, because once you cut it, it's rasterized and you can't edit it anymore from the original. This, I went to the part that's going to be cutting, because you can see the left layer, when it says left, it's completely rounded on both sides still, so I hit Control J, a black overlay for the color. I went back to the original left, rasterized it, and we have that left right there, which you're going to drag to the left in a second. Lots of lefts. Yep, dragging it over. I'm cutting in a bit. You want to completely overlap that circle just so you can get a nice clean cut inside. Because if you don't completely overlap that circle at the ends, it's going to be a little messy. And this is where you, on the original layer, hold Control, and then click the little icon right there where the mouse is pointing. And now it's selected, you're still on the original layer, and then you're going to click, well, you're going to get deselect after you hit delete. And that's gone, you can see it's nicely cut in. I feel like a sports commentator. Yep, and I'm just mentioning there that it's almost done. You can edit as you need to, and I'll be back. Well, I won't be back because I'm rewatching the footage now, but this version of me that currently thinks they're talking will be back in a moment with the completed version. Not quite sure what I'm talking about there. Talking about something. I don't think it was too important. Yep, click. What you doing? Oh, that's the part I'm mentioning where, let's say you make a mistake for the edges and you don't want a cut to be too deep. So you bring that over and you can see it covers the hole, just merge it down, and then you can recut it if you want to. Because some cuts are going to be deeper than others. For example, if you want to reuse the frame that I'm using. So just edit that and then cut it and you're good to go. Wait, you're good to go to recut it. Gotta finish my sentences. Yep, so once you're done, just merge the group. And with your group merged, you're gonna go to blending options and you're gonna apply an inner shadow, pattern overlay, and a drop shadow. So first inner shadow, there are the settings on screen. And then we're gonna go down to a pattern overlay. And those are the settings on screen again. And if you want to find a pattern like that, just Google Photoshop line patterns, and you're going to find so many that you can just download, upload, download, open, and just restart Photoshop, and it'll be there for you to use. And then drop shadow. And those are the settings on screen. You might want to come back and adjust those in the future, but for now, it works for what we need it to work for. Yep. And at this point, just gonna rename it to keep it clean. That's a capital H. Oh, I fixed it. Cool. Then you're gonna rotate it in a moment. I'm not sure what I'm doing. All right, I'm hiding it. And you're gonna rotate it, and you hold shift when you rotate to make sure it's a clean rotation. Drag it how you want it. And once you have it in a nice position, just hit the check mark. And then bring up your character. In my case, it's Charizard. Create a clipping mask. Rearrange the character how you want them. Blending options, and all I did was apply a drop shadow to Charizard, and those aren't the settings. I'm editing the settings, I think. Am I keeping those settings? Yeah, I changed it a little bit. There we go. Yeah, moving him a little bit. Moving him. Yeah, I'm talking about the cuts that you see going in. You can always make those deeper or less deep if you really wanted to. In my case, for his wing, where I was putting at earlier, it probably would have been better not to have it so deep, but it's really up to you and how you want to approach it. Not quite sure. Oh yeah, I'm talking about those things. So those are pretty fun to mess around with. If you want to edit them, I recommend that you do. You just hit Control J around it with the lasso tool after you have it lassoed. I'm leaving it in a little place. Reclip the character, and then you can move it around as you see fit. Because that space down there, as you can see, wasn't completely down because we used the entire canvas size and we're already top to bottom. We had no more space to build off from. But one of those little dots makes a nice little clean piece at the bottom. And you'll likely, that one in the center you see right there, we're going to move that on and move that later in the future because it's going to be interfering with the text banner. And I'm just saying there, the backup's going to be there if you need it or if you want it to work from. That's up to you. Now create a group, and this is going to be our text section. And I'm repeating, I believe that that's going to be moved. We're going to grab our white from the color palette and our dark blue. There we go. It's like I'm reading the future. It is a little awkward to just sit here and watch the footage and just voice over it, but I'm not sure how weird it feels for you as you're watching it to see or to experience it like this. Yep, there we go. Resize it. Doesn't matter what size it is right now because we're going to do Control T and redo it in a minute. We just want the initial frame down. Now I put it like that. I'd recommend make it even a bit skinnier. You'll see later on, I'll mention it again. Bring it over until it connects. Make sure you're holding shift when you drag it. And bring that over until it's about the halfway mark, if not a little more. And that's going to be your initial banner. As you can see, it overlaps that little piece sticking out, so we're going to move that in a minute. Yep, I should not have made it taller there, should have made it skinnier, but it's all good. You can edit it yourself for your specific situation. Yep, we're lassoing and we're moving. In this case, we didn't hit Control J, we're just doing a cut that will remove it while still keeping it in the same layer. So there we go, I moved it down. Deselect. And now we're going to do our little triangular cut. So first, the best way to do this, in my opinion, is we're going to grab the, well, any shape tool really, and then we're going to resize it to where it's going to will take us to halfway through that shape we were using. You can see that's halfway. So now when we use the pen tool and we click it and then we hold shift and we click somewhere else, it's going to create an even diagonal line all the way to the center, which you can then make a nice clean cut. So it takes me a few attempts here. Come on, Ivan, you'll get it eventually. Keep going. Oh, not quite. Try again. There I go again. Retrying. Funny enough, at the ends, I'm going to end up in the same exact spot where I just was. Like, oh, let me zoom in. Not quite. Let's try again. Zoom back in. Click. Did I get it this time? Yeah, it lined up there, so it's in the center. Let's bring it down. And that works. It's a little off, reason being that the actual, what's it called? The rectangle itself isn't perfectly even in its sizing, so that's naturally going to happen. Make selection. It's a little off there as well, but don't worry about it. It's going to look completely fine, and if you make your rectangle even, it'll be fine. I'm overusing the word fine. Yep, so just hit delete after that, and it's going to chop that out. Deselect that. As you can see, it's all nicely cut in an even fashion. For the most part, that's a little secret. And then you can get rid of that ugly black block because it's no longer needed. Just delete that. And then we're going to do blending options, and we're going to apply a pattern overlay and a drop shadow followed by a grunge. And you will see all the settings on screen for each of these. Need a bag of popcorn for this. And grab some coffee as well. We're at 6 minutes left in the video. Honestly, the video probably would have hit an hour long, if not an hour and 20 minutes, because that red section to the left took so long to make. This is only the second time, not excluding the mock-up I did earlier, that I've done something like that, so I'm still not perfect at it yet. There we go, main flag, hiding the settings. And then I dropped in the grunge already. All I did was resize it and then apply a clipping mask. The moment it has release, but it would say create clipping mask or apply clipping mask. I'm doing darken, I'm bringing it down to 15%, but if I were you, I'd honestly go down to 10%. 15% was still a little too much, made it a bit too dark. which you'll see later. And adding the text using the darker blue. First try Pokemon, but as you can see, I made it a bit too tall and not wide enough. So that flag really should have been wider and skinnier, but it didn't happen for the video, and I'm not expecting everything to be completely perfect. As long as I point out the mistakes, you guys will be able to fix it on your own. Not like I'm trying to push that onto you, but yeah. Now I'm putting in something shorter because it'll help fill up that space a bit better. Still trying on the text. There we go. Now we're going to go back and we're going to grab the orange and we're going to create one more underneath using the rounded rectangle tool. There you can see me doing my thing, dragging stuff around, getting work done. Dragged it too far, I'll drag it back later. Miscellaneous section. And then you're going to want to maximize the curve on this as well. There you go, I'm holding control, I'm just dragging to the right with my mouse. And that piece should have been bigger as well. You'll see that at the ends. I didn't realize my mic was off until after I went to unpause at the end when I was switching to Discord to show you the final view. So there is a ending to the video. But I had to go back and do this voiceover. So dragging that over. I can really appreciate now how difficult the videos other YouTubers make for voiceovers, because it is kind of difficult when you're doing it for your own work. There we go, bring the opacity down because the previous settings that we used for the banner above were too dark. Because if you're applying a pattern to a darker image, you have to make it more the opacity for the pattern more visible, but if you're doing it to a a darker image, you need to make the opacity lower. That's just other stuff, and as I mentioned, you want that below section to be bigger than what I had it at. I didn't even center that, did I? Oh, jeez, look at that. Pretend that's centered. Am I gonna go back and center it? Nope. Nope, no such luck. Pretend that never happens. I'm moving it up a little bit. It doesn't really matter. A little bit above the center is probably best for it. I kind of like it where it is now. Just needs to be resized in general. Brought one of those over because I mentioned they're fun to play around with. You can just put it in random spots, and I just put one there. Right there, yep. And I believe now I'm about to show you the Discord look. So it's going to pop in a second to Discord, and then my normal voice will be resuming soon. So there, I'm on Discord now. That's the final look. And I'm just going to pause now because my voice is going to resume in a second. Okay, I realized my mic cut out, but this is how it looks like when the actual server is top left corner. You might want to mess around with it a bit just to see what works best for you. I might make this little piece right here, the white part, longer and the orange one bigger, and maybe the white part a bit skinnier, but that's the overall look that you'd expect to see. Thank you so much for watching, and up on the screen you're going to see a link to another tutorial that's similar to this one, and below you're going to find all the files available for download. Have an amazing day. Okay, I realized my mic cut out, but this is how it looks like when the actual server It's top left corner. You might want to mess around with it a bit just to see what works best for you. I might make this little piece right here, the white part, longer and the orange one bigger, and maybe the white part a bit skinnier, but that's the overall look that you'd expect to see. Thank you so much for watching, and up on the screen you're going to see a link to another tutorial that's similar to this one, and below you're going to find all the files available for download. Have an amazing day.